Look us back here on the Rich Eisen Show, everybody. Bruce Feldman, Fox Sports, The Athletic. You going to see Prime? Is that what you're going to go see?
Yeah, tomorrow, flying out. I can't wait to see it because the last time I was in Boulder, they were, the hot thing, but it was like...
Last year you're talking about?
Yeah, last year. It was September. We had them coming off of the TCU win. I think they were going to play Nebraska. They were going to win that game and would go on to it. But now they take a huge, big step this year. Maybe Travis Hunter's going to win the Heisman. There's a lot of stuff going on.
They're 7-2 right now. And, if they make the Big 12 championship game,
they could win it, and then they're going to the playoff, and they're going to have a bye probably have a bye for the first week.
You think so, huh?
Well, if they win it, I mean, it's not a lock that the Big 12, especially a 2-loss Big 12 champ, would definitely get a bye.
Right.
We'll see what would be with potentially Boise State. But just the idea that they have a legit shot to make the playoff, and they do. Look, they're going to play a Utah team that's really good on the front seven, and they get after people. And if they get after Shedeur, and bang him around, he's to me the most valuable quarterback of anybody because he's, quarterbacks are obviously always really valuable, but him more so than anybody else.
It's a huge step down. Is that what you're saying as well? I mean, but I guess you could say that about most college
but I think
programs.
they lean on him so much in the offensive line. Alabama certainly leans on Jalen Milroe, but like Will Howard, he's the clear starter at Ohio State. Dylan Gabriel, clear starter. But at Oregon, I just feel like Shedeur is carrying so much for them.
And that's Friday night.
That is a Saturday game. Yes.
Saturday game. Okay. And then you'll be spending a lot of time in Columbus. We'll talk about that in a second.
I know you're going to join me on that. Sneak in the luggage, Rich. Come on.
Back on the Rich Eisen Show Radio Network, sitting at the Rich Eisen Show desk, furnished by Grainger with supplies and solutions for every industry. Grainger has the right product for you. Call clickgrainger.com or just stop by. And Bruce Feldman here, and we were just talking for the last couple minutes about Deion Sanders, who you're going to go see on Fox in Utah at Colorado. I mean, can you give Deion Coach of the Year, run here? What do you think? I mean,
he definitely going to get consideration. I think Curt Cignetti, with what he has done at Indiana. Now, there's still, look, maybe they'll knock off Ohio State. Still, even if they lose and they get to 11-1, not somehow, given what Indiana was. But I think, it's tricky because right now, Deion's done a terrific job. I would say the guy who would probably win Coach of the Year in the Big 12 is Kalani Sitake because they were preseason number 13 in the Big 12, and they're undefeated, and they really beat down a really good Kansas team that's in the top 20. They won at SMU, which is 14th in the poll. So they have no losses. So I think, my guess is those two guys would be the front runner, but Deion definitely will get consideration.
I mean, the fact that Colorado's got 7 wins, they're 7-2. They have, I guess, the so-called control of one's own destiny here.
That's right.
They win out, including a Big 12 championship game potentially against BYU. Colorado's in the college football playoffs. That would happen.
And look.
And it's possible.
Look at it through this prism, Rich.
Yes, sir.
Like, every game they play in, they will have the 2 best players on the field, Travis Hunter and Shedeur. Like, now, when we get to the playoff, that might be a different story.
Right.
But right now, these games, like Utah's playing with their 3rd-string quarterback. They're coming off in a very emotional loss where they thought they had the game won, and everybody in the building, other than people who were in blue, thought they had the game won, and BYU ended up beating them. And so, so I don't know what kind of shape they go into this game in being Utah psychologically, but when you have, and it's not just Travis, and it's not just Shedeur, like Jimmy Horn Jr., when he's healthy, looks like he's the fastest guy in the field, and LeJonte Wester looks like he's the quickest guy in the field, and the number 4 receiver is making one-handed catches and mossing guys, and the offensive line is quite a bit improved. It's still shaky, but and the defensive line, they added a bunch of guys in the portal, and they're playing well. It's not just those 2 guys, but those 2 guys are the difference makers.
Well, and that's why they're 7-2, I think, because you could make a case that last year Colorado frequently had the 2 best players on the field anyway. I know Shedeur was still growing up, if you will, but Travis Hunter's been the grown-ass man that he was the minute he started suiting up for Deion at Jackson State. You know what I mean? Like, so it is an improved team, you know, and obviously I'm biased. I'm excited.
Rich, you could have two guys who arguably could be at the Heisman, you know, in the top 5. It's not that deep of a Heisman crop right now. Now, a lot can change, but like you have Ashton Genty from Boise State has had a phenomenal season. Cam Ward at Miami, they just lost. It wasn't his fault. It's like the defense is struggling, but it's like, it's not like where you say, oh, there's 10 guys right now who are having phenomenal seasons. Like Jalen Milroe last week looked awesome at LSU, where they blew out LSU, but there's like, he struggled against Tennessee, and you know, there's off games. I think there's those two guys, I would say, legitimately have a case to be in the top 5 of the Heisman race.
Is this the big noon game, or it's not the big noon game for Fox?
It is the big noon game.
Okay, it is. Okay.
I hope I'm not speaking wrong. I know it's our big noon game.
Is that
I'll check.
The Colorado game?
Give me
Yeah,
a
it is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing my work.
I'm only asking that.
You're asking me.
No. I'm only asking that as well, because that means that Gus and Deion are talking this week, and I would love to be a fly on the wall when that happens. I'll tell you that.
It's funny. I was so we had a connection through DFW, and so I didn't realize Gus was with me on the second leg of it. He wasn't with me on the first leg.
Okay.
And so I'm in like a barbecue place in the DFW airport, and there are it's Texas Georgia game is on, and I'm sitting there watching it and just waiting for our flight to leave, and here comes Gus, and Gus, who's not a huge guy, and he has a hat on, and is like, so nobody's really recognizing him at first until Gus opens up his mouth, and then all of a sudden people are like, wait, I know that voice, you know, kind of thing.
That's the truth.
And Gus isn't like it's not a subtle voice, like it's a impassioned, you know, even when he's talking about he had to go to Burger King to get something because the, you know, whatever. It was like, just like people are looking, you know, so. Yeah.
I love the mini onion rings.
The best. God, I love
he's
him.
a talent. I mean,
Oh my
you know,
gosh.
like people in our business, your business more than mine, are considered talent. Gus is like, he's got a gift. He's clearly, you know, it's like, you know, I'm a fan because I mean, just of, he can do big moments that are, you know, there's a handful of, you know, great play-by-play guys. But
Now, not to correct you, you know, it's not he can do big moments. Big moments can do him.
Yeah.
That's
He
basically
finds
it.
them. Yeah.
It's unreal. It's unreal, and that's why when I say go into a game like Carolina and the Giants, I'm like, can I have a little bit of the Gus in me? Just a little bit, and I got a nice, you know, finish in overtime, right?
Mm-hmm.
But listen, Gus. When he was here, he spent an entire hour with us.
It was great.
He'll never forget it. I got Bruce Feldman here on the. We could talk about him for hours. Bruce Feldman here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's pop up the rankings. We're getting to the nitty and the gritty here now. It's a lot of Big Ten at the top, man. It's 4 Big Ten teams. It's tough to still consider
the first two are hard to argue with at this point. After that, especially those next two, I don't know.
Why?
Why? Because Texas has not beaten anybody in the top 25, and they lost by 2 touchdowns at home. Now, like, Georgia's really, really talented, and Georgia's defense was healthy and got after Quinn Ewers. But Georgia's a 2-loss team. Georgia just got blown out pretty much by Ole Miss. And then you got Penn State. The best thing Penn State has was a close loss at home to the number 2 team.
Yep.
Penn State doesn't have anything great on their resume beyond that. They struggle with Bowling Green. Like, I have a hard time going, yeah, that's the 4th best team in the country, but who are you going to put up there? Like, I could make a case for BYU based on resume. You know, I think Tennessee's got a terrific defense, really good running back, but like, I don't know. This is where you kind of run into some obstacles here. I just have a hard time, like, Texas's resume, you know, I'm a believer in the eye test a little with them because I was in Ann Arbor where they looked really good.
Yep.
But that's a 6-6 team they knocked around. No offense.
No offense taken.
Yeah. But like, that's what we're going off of because there's nothing else. You know, they beat Vandy, who's having a great year for Vandy, but they beat Vandy by 3 points. You know, it's not like there's anything else. Like, I don't know what the win is. You look at and go, yeah, that's why Texas is number 3.
Well, I guess, you know, the rankings will matter once we finally get through conference championship games, or maybe even before conference championship games. You could make the case that, you know, Indiana who you're going to see in person, because that's the big noon Fox
next
game
week
in
against
2 weeks
at Ohio State.
Right, and so let's just say if Indiana wins that game, they're going to Indianapolis to play most likely Oregon for the right to get that bye week in the college football playoff. But even if they have a near miss, I mean they're
11. They're probably going to be 11-1,
right? So that's what I'm saying. So that might actually be good enough. I mean,
I think it would be good enough without any great wins. Now, up till last week, they'd kind of got taken it to everybody they played. Last week they had their hands full with Michigan.
Oh, trust me, I stayed up till 2 a.m. in Munich thinking this is the one, and then it wasn't. But I hear you on that front for sure. But when you take a look at the brackets, the way it would be right now, we've created that right there. Indiana would get a home game. Alabama would go visit Bloomington. Ole Miss would go visit Happy Valley. Boise State would visit
It's a rematch
Columbus,
of last year's bowl game.
right?
Ole Miss and Penn State.
Yeah, but Ohio State didn't. Everybody kind of tapped out, right? I mean,
No, I'm saying like Ole Miss and Penn State played in the bowl game last year.
Oh, that's right.
How
Ohio
about
State
Miami,
lost to
Ohio State
Missouri.
in the quarterfinal.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then Tennessee would be hosting Notre Dame, and then Oregon, Texas, BYU, and Miami would be the ones that you're basing it right now. If they won their conference championship, the conference championships can actually knock people out, right? I mean, is it possible? Like, let's just say Colorado beats BYU. Would they give BYU an at-large? Would they do that?
I think they, if it was competitive, I think it's hard to knock BYU out of it with 12-1 when you have 2 very good wins already. Mm-hmm. People are having a hard time with BYU because BYU is preseason number 13 and they haven't been in the conference, not just in the overall.
Right.
And I think that's why it's being held against them. Look, I could make a case Boise State should be higher up. Like, Boise State has 1 loss, same as Texas. Their 1 loss was 3 points at the number 1 team in the country, right? They didn't get blown out. They lost by 3 points. They also have a win where they beat Washington State. And people can snicker about Washington State, but Washington State is ranked higher than anybody Texas beat. And they beat Washington State, who has a really good quarterback, John Mateer, and they beat Washington State by 3 touchdowns. I mean, I get it. People are going to look and go, well, yeah, they had their hands full with Nevada. Well, you know what? So did SMU. The rest of the schedule isn't great. It's certainly not of the SEC caliber, but they went to Oregon and almost beat Oregon.
So the Georgia is out? Is that what we're saying right here? Or
look,
what?
Georgia.
How does Georgia get back into this?
Georgia's going to play Tennessee this week.
Okay.
If they beat Tennessee, then Georgia's going to probably springboard, into the top 8 at least. And, if Georgia wins out, whether they get to the SEC title game or not, if they're sitting there at 10-2 with the schedule they beat, their schedule is much better than their schedule. Alabama has a really good resume because they've beaten a bunch of teams in the top 25. They've beaten more than those first 5 combined.
So I guess let's just, walk through it a little bit here. Again, Bruce Feldman, we're going over the college football playoff rankings right now. It's tough to imagine there won't be 4 Big Ten teams, right? At this point in time.
Yeah.
That the conference let's just say Ohio State wins out, with all due respect to Indiana. Indiana would still, unless they get totally blown out, right? I don't know how
they
Indiana
did.
doesn't
They're
make
11-1.
I mean, Penn State's not going to lose the rest of the way either.
They shouldn't.
Right?
They shouldn't.
Right. Let's just say they don't. And then again, they would have the benefit of not having to play a college, a Big Ten championship game. They're in Ohio
4 teams
State.
who would have to fall quite a bit because keep in mind, Tennessee and Georgia are going to play this weekend.
So does that mean that let's say Georgia beats Tennessee, that would knock Tennessee out of competition here?
I don't know. Tennessee has a good win over Alabama.
And Alabama's sitting right there. So how many SEC teams do you think make it?
The one who I think has the best positioning right now, they're also the team that I think people in the SEC least want to play, is Ole Miss. So Ole Miss is sitting there. They have 2 really bad opponents remaining on their schedule. Ole Miss.
So they'll be 10-2.
Most likely 10-2.
Now, how do they make an SEC championship game?
Well, I think you got to see how this plays out with Tennessee. You got that game in College Station where number 3 Texas is playing number 15 Texas A&M, And, like, this is the one I have a hard time wrapping my brain around. If Texas A&M, wins at home and beats Texas, Texas is going to be most likely 10-2, no top 25 wins. Is a team like that going to get left out of the playoff? I really have my doubts that there's going to be a 10-2 SEC team that has, and I'm not entirely sure why, other than it was a playoff team last year when there was a 14 playoff and they beat Alabama. So I think in people's minds, including mine, but I'm not on the committee, obviously. I think there's the perception of the eyeball test. We're like, well, we think they're really good, and you don't unwrap it to be like, oh, but they got it taken to them and got handled by Georgia. If they lose another game, then all of a sudden it's just not a one-off. It's like 2 games where, because I don't feel like people look at Texas A&M like they're a powerhouse. Like Mike Elko's done a really good job in the first year, but they lost at home to Notre Dame. And you can say whatever you want about like what state, it was the first game for Elko at A&M. Notre Dame went in there with like a really inexperienced offensive line, and they ran the ball well when they needed to, and they won the game. And they also lost handily at South Carolina. I'm not saying if they beat Texas, they shouldn't be in the playoff, because then that would be a big win. I think then it comes down to they would most likely be a 2-loss team, and Texas would be a 2-loss team, and they would have the head-to-head win. So I'm sure there's nothing more the Aggies would love than to knock Texas out of the playoff. But like that's the kind of what-if discussion that I think people are rolling around their heads right now in November.
These are the next 3 weeks. Playing out next 4 weeks, right? Because the first weekend of December is when a lot of these conference championship games. But that shouldn't have. I mean, maybe the Big 12 does affect who gets.
It shouldn't.
Gets in.
I don't think it should in the case of BYU, unless BYU stumbles along the way. Like if BYU is 12-1, I think, again, just my 2 cents. I think there deserves to be 2 Big 12 teams in there.
How about Miami? They're safe, right? Miami.
Well, they've went out. They certainly, but like Miami loses in the ACC title game. I think Miami has a tougher argument if they lose 2 games. Like they obviously lost to Georgia Tech on the road, and then if they lose to the ACC title game, they only have 1 win of any note, which is over a top 25 Louisville team on the road. That's not a great run.
Then give me Army's chances. I mean, let's say Army beats Notre Dame. What happens?
Well, then Notre Dame is definitely out.
Right. But so then what happens?
I think then Army...
Can Army get in there?
Can Army get in over Boise State? I think that would be a significant win. We'll see.
Dude, if Army makes
that would be awesome.
A college football playoff, that would be unbelievable. Like the most old school...
In the days no NIL, no transfer portal,
In making the first ever 12-team college football playoff, I'm getting goosebumps.
What if they're undefeated though and they're left out? Is the cry going to be as loud as it was for Florida State last year?
It's up to Rich. No, seriously, I think it was up to people like that because. I felt like I was pretty vocal on the Florida State side. Now, that was a 4-team playoff. This is a 12-team playoff. It's different. Again, what does it look like when they play Notre Dame? I don't want to say that's a playoff game because, it's easy for us to say all these games are elimination games when in reality, half of them probably aren't. That one, certainly would feel like it is.
Army, Notre Dame, and that's in a couple weeks, right?
Yeah, and keep in mind, Navy was undefeated, and Notre Dame just absolutely clobbered them.
Well, let's see, man. All right. We're getting there. Getting there.
It's fun. Let's do it.
Send you off to Boulder, Colorado, sir. Thanks again. Greatly appreciate it. We will see you next week.
Send regards to your people.
Will you please? Sapp, too. Say hi to Sapp.
If I see him.
99 in your program. Number 1 in your heart. Warren Sapp. He's killing it on that staff for Deion Sanders. 7-2 Colorado. Let's go. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku Channel. 12 to 3 Eastern for free.